Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we're going to be talking about rated battleground blitz. This is going to be kind of like a feedback and some general and maybe even a spicy take on PvP in general as well. I don't talk a lot about PvP on this channel, but I did do a similar video for solo battlegrounds when that came out in Dragonflight, or not for solo battlegrounds, but for solo shuffle. And now I'm going to do one for solo battlegrounds here in the War Within. I'm one season late, but I didn't really do it in season one. And I did it a few times, had fun. Did a little bit more here in season two these last couple weeks to kind of just get enough games under my belt to make an opinion. And this is going to be that. Now, it's important to say that I am a very casual PvPer at this point in my while playing. So if you are a little bit more hardcore in your play style, you might disagree with some of the things I'm about to say, but I don't think it makes them any less true, especially coming from a more casual player's mindset when it comes to this. So despite being a casual PvP player, in solo shuffle I have managed to get to 2400 before. Now, maybe that's really easy. I don't know actually if it's easy or hard, but I know that unlocked the achievements and stuff like that, and that was cool, and it was fun doing that. I did that back in Dragonflight. And so I wanted to see what my experience would be in the battlegrounds. And frankly, I'm not going to have enough time to fully decide, is it easier to do solo shuffle or battlegrounds? My theory is probably shuffle, but, and just give a full rundown of it. But I have played enough games to give at least probably a pretty valued opinion, in my opinion. Someone who's played World of Warcraft for as long as I have, and I used to PvP a lot. So I actually have my achievement track here. I'm trying to finish off my 250,000 honorable kills achievement. I actually looked up, and about 200,000 of those are like Wrath Lich King and before. So a huge number. And I know that because it's shared across your account, and I know my main before and my main now is the Paladin and how many honorable kills my Paladin has. And so, yeah, it's a lot of those honorable kills were from back in the day, and when I enjoyed PvP a lot more than what I currently do. And now I normally play other games to kind of satiate any kind of PvP need of, competitively playing against another player, whether that's League of Legends or even playing Fortnite with my son, or any shooter games typically end up being probably the choice for me most of the time. But a game like League of Legends is fine as well. Sometimes even Hearthstone Battlegrounds I like to do a little bit. I think all those modes of PvP are probably better, and we can kind of get into why when I get into my little bit more spicy take. So these rated battlegrounds, my experience with this is that it is fun. It's a little bit more of a concise and people trying to win more than random battlegrounds, which is a good thing. So I'm going to start off with some good news here. When you queue random battlegrounds, at any moment you could get 5 people on your team that are like, I'm just here to farm honor, I don't care about winning. And they just sit AFK or do whatever, and you can't do anything about it, and it's terrible. And they can, when I was younger, they could rage bait you into getting into an argument. Now, of course, I'm a little bit older and wiser and have kids, and I just ignore it. But that could definitely happen back in the day, where these people who don't even try. So in the Battleground Blitz, everybody's pretty much trying. Unfortunately, that doesn't make them any better at the game, was what I found out. And despite people trying as hard as they can, it doesn't necessarily always matter, which kind of proves me wrong in my random battlegrounds, thinking if we just all would try, we would win. It turns out that is not the case. There are some people, no matter how hard they try, they will not accomplish much in the realm of PvP. So, overall, I think it's a good feature because of the fact that it allows you to play battlegrounds in a little bit more competitive way. But there are, and that's probably the main goal, right? Let's make a battleground where anybody can queue for it, solo queue, and people are going to at least try to win in it. And honestly, I will also say it's actually most of the time less toxic than a random battleground, at least in my, 50 whatever games I played, right? It's been a little bit less toxic than a random battleground. I've only had to block and report one person, which is, pretty lower, I think, than I would in a random, if I did that many random BGs. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's like 1 every 15 games or so. You have to block somebody who's absolutely insane or something. But yeah, it's certainly less than League of Legends, I'll say that. So that has that going for it as well. So it's a very solid game mode. But it brought me to kind of like my little bit more spicy take, and that is something I talked about in Solo Shuffle as well. In Solo Shuffle, my experience, despite getting up to 2400, was largely my impact on the games was kind of minimal. Despite, doing some maybe a clutch kick or a clutch stun or just doing insane damage because I can do my PvE rotation very well. um, despite having little bits of impact here and there and winning games here and there, largely the healer was the source of wins. And whatever healer was better, even if they were only 10% better, then that team was going to win 5 or 6 games, or that healer was going to win 5 or 6 games, and you had to try to steal that win from that healer if you could, and try to overcome him by picking on the worst DPS, or maybe picking on that healer. Maybe that healer was a little bit better than the other healer, but he wasn't as good when he was being focused or something, right? And you would have to try to overcome that. And it was very, very difficult, but that's how I did it. That's how I personally did it as a casual PvP player, to get over 2400 in Solo Shuffle. Was I just did this healer method where I decided which healer was better, and I tried to just steal one game from that better healer to make sure he didn't go 6-0. Maybe he went 5-1, and then hopefully then I won the 3 games with him, one game without him, and I went 4-2. That would be my goal, right? He went 5-1, but I went 4-2. That would basically be my goal, and that it worked for me, at least. I don't know if that would work for everybody, but it certainly worked for me. That's how that was the pattern recognition I could do. That's how I identified it. It certainly worked for me. It's anecdotal, of course, but I can say it worked for me. Rated battlegrounds, unfortunately, are the same thing, except for there's 2 healers, and this becomes a little bit rough. Now, of course, there are objectives. You can make clutch plays, you can use your movement to capture flags. There's other aspects as well, but largely the better healers are winning these games because they can run the flags, they can hold a node by themselves because they're basically unkillable one-on-one. You have to have 2, 3, or 4 people to kill a healer, which is just ridiculous. And if the healer is good, right? If the healer's bad, that's not the case. Like, there are some healers that I solo, but not any good healers do I solo kill. And so it becomes this weird thing where if the healers are even, the match will probably be pretty even. If both healers are better than both your healers, you're probably going to get absolutely smoked. And then even if one healer is like an S tier healer, and then like their other healer is a B, and then both your healers are like Bs, that S tier healer is going to carry that game for the other team, or for your team if they're on your team. That's been my experience so far. It's been very similar to Solo Shuffle. And the spicy take, if you've waited this long for the spicy take, is that I think healers should be removed in PvP, and tanks. Healers and tanks should not be in PvP. It should not happen. And I was thinking about this, and that is why it's unbalanced, and that is why it's not fun ultimately, is because of the healing. This would be a huge change in like arena, or maybe you just keep it only in arena or something like that, rated arena, just to keep the PvP players happy for nostalgia reasons. But games would be much faster, first of all. If there was no one, if you could still allow off healing, right? So you increase the healing, self-healing of warriors. So like in Mists of Pandaria going on, Second Wind, below 35% health, warriors heal themselves. Increase WOG, increase heals of Shadow Priest, increase heals of Boomkins, all that kind of, and all self-healing, increase heals of Drain Life on Warlock. Not to where they are then unkillable, right? And give everybody some sort of self-healing, just like in MoP. Not to the point where they're unkillable, but just to the point where there's some resistance to dying. There's some kiting it out. There's some LOSing and value to resetting and stuff like that. And that would be a hard balance to strike, but it would be similar to Mists of Pandaria in that way. And how did I come to this conclusion? Well, I was basically comparing it to other PvP games, and I go, well, what is the difference between WoW PvP and all these games? And it's the healing. The healing is ridiculous. Yes, there are supports in other games. There's supports in some of the shooter games. There's supports in League of Legends, and they can heal, but it's very limited. Nobody is healing. A Sonya in League of Legends isn't just auto healing the whole team and being unkillable in the middle. In fact, the Sonya is going to be very, very easy to kill, right? In that case. And the healing can be meaningful in that particular case as well, but it's not just like completely overpowered. You don't face off against a Sonya and your team doesn't have a healer and you go, well, I guess we lose. It's not the case. Whereas in World of Warcraft, it certainly would be that way. If you went into a 3 versus 3 game and they had a priest healer and your team had no healer, you just say, well, I guess we lose. And that's just the way it is, because they can stop so much. But they have so much power and so much agency. They're like the jungle of League of Legends in World of Warcraft, except for times 100. Or they're like the tanks when tanks are busted in Overwatch, or any short time where like Mercy is busted in Overwatch or something, right? As a healer, as a support. That's what they are like in World of Warcraft. But then, of course, they get changed. But in World of Warcraft, sometimes they get changed. And then what happens is healers get, like, what's the point of even being here? As the healer ends up saying, is why am I even here? I can't keep anybody up. The damage is too high. And so they go back to the way it was before. And that is the problem. It's a never-ending cycle. And ultimately, yes, if you're a healer player, you're probably really mad at me right now because you're saying, well, I only heal and I want to heal in PvP. And I like being super strong. Well, I would too. So I completely understand. I'm not arguing with you. If I was completely overpowered, I would want to stay overpowered as well. That is, I'm just merely speaking about what is good for a game in general, not even what is good for WoW. Maybe it's not the best thing for WoW because the PvP players remaining are so ingrained in the old ways that they wouldn't want to do it. And no one new is going to come in and play PvP in WoW, so why bother changing it? That very well could be the case. I'm perfectly willing to accept if that is the case, that people aren't going to come PvP on WoW anymore. Maybe that is just true. Maybe that is just where we are in PvP in World of Warcraft. But ultimately, I would challenge anybody to prove me wrong that healing isn't just completely busted in World of Warcraft for PvP. If you compare it to any other game, you'll notice a huge discrepancy in the healing amount in this game and the invulnerability of healers. I mean, I was trying to battle a priest in World PvP, and I ended up having to run away because I was getting away. Line of sight, I'm like, okay, he's probably out of cooldowns now after a couple minutes or whatever. Maybe now I can go in. Nope, he still is unkillable. He's still passively just killing me without even doing anything. It was pretty crazy and a kind of a eye-opening experience, and it kind of like fully formed this opinion. So I took my solo shuffle experience, my Battleground Blitz experience, and then this like World PvP, just this one experience, and kind of put it together. I'm like, yeah, this is what's wrong with the game, right? And so ultimately, it's like the problem is too, this healer, this priest, he was still at 100% mana after like 5 minutes of fighting me, even DPSing, right? Maybe the DPS spells should cost a lot more mana. Something should cost mana. He's still at 100% mana. It's just mind-boggling to me how powerful healers are in this game, if you know what you're doing, of course, right? Yes, there are people who don't know what they're doing, and they become a lot easier to defeat, but you know, you can't base the whole game around that. You have to base the game around somebody who actually knows how to press their buttons. And yeah, I think ultimately that's the biggest problem. Rated Battleground Blitz, very fun, but I will tell you this: if you are a good player and you can queue healer, so you play something that can heal, I would learn how to heal if you want to push your rating up. And maybe at a certain point, maybe after 2400, maybe after 2000, this changes. I know in Solo Shuffle it worked all the way to 2400, but at a certain level, maybe not anymore. It won't matter. But if you want to get up to that level, play healer, learn all of your defensives, learn all of your cooldowns, track everything you can, become invulnerable, and do things like on a Arethi Basin. This is what you do: go to a node where there's like 3 or 4 on the other team, and just have them try to kill you for a while, or maybe 2 or 3. 4 might be a little overkill. Like 2 or 3, and have them try to kill you. While you have 7 other players facing off against, let's say, 4 of their players. So then you have a 7-on-4 advantage, and it just becomes this thing where if you are a good healer, you can do that. You can stall. You can create issues for the other team by just existing and pressing your buttons correctly and properly. And you know, I can almost guarantee you, because when I have healers do that on my team, it becomes so easy. A healer did it on the other team in a recent game that I did, where it took like 4 of us to take out this healer at Lumbermill. No joke. And keep in mind, I'm not the best PvP player, but I am pressing my PvE rotation basically perfectly because I am very good at that. I make guides on how to do that. I am like 99% like accurate on my PvE rotation, and I cannot do this thing. I am stunning. I am interrupting heals at the last second. You know, I'm doing everything properly. I'm blinding. I'm pressing everything I possibly can, using all of my abilities, and along with 3 other people DPSing the healer, and maybe they're all doing terrible DPS, okay? But nevertheless, we should still be able to kill this guy. And it just was a terrible, terrible experience overall. So, yeah, that'll be about it for this video. Ultimately, the TLDR, Rated Battleground Blitz, is a good mode, but ultimately everything in WoW is going to fail, in my opinion, until healers are removed from PvP, and tanks as well. It should be a DPS thing, and you off heal. If you want to have people still be able to play as Holy or Discipline or Restoration or whatever, depending on what class you play, then they just have to use their DPS spells or something, and their damage is like normalized to a normal DPS, and then their healing only does the amount of healing as like an off heal would do for another class. I have no idea how to make it work. Maybe it would never work in World of Warcraft. Fair enough. But that's why PvP will never grow again in World of Warcraft. So if you want PvP to grow, these are the kind of big swings you're going to have to take. If you're fine with it the way it is, well, then just keep it the way it is, and it'll slowly keep dying out. So that's it for this one, guys. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.